actually, I made a note before when you were speaking how like everyone's like, oh, well, each one's different and everything is, it depends. I really try to challenge my clients and work strategically with them to figure it out. To be like, are you really that different? Right? Because you just ran through a whole thing. So maybe we can have a little menu board ready for you that goes to, maybe your menu is larger than others, but there are like some sort of templatized buckets that you have, I'm sure, within your business that we should spend some time thinking about. And how can we standardize them? Because it kind of sucks to have to go every time and be like, what should I charge for this? Right? How many hours is this going to take? Like one, you're burning your hours just by making a quote every time. So if you can take some of that time up front, or maybe, it's one thing and then you add to it as you go, but having that strategic thinking about, okay, is it that different? Or what things can I replicate, duplicate, repeat? What things can I repeat?
Welcome to the Web Design Business Podcast with your host, Josh Hall, helping you build a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hello, my web designer friend. Welcome in. It's really good to have you here. And I'm excited that you're here because when you're a web designer, heads up, especially if you're new, one of the unexpected worst parts of the job is managing projects. And it's fun and exciting at first, especially when you start to dial in your systems, but this gets ever so tricky when you get to a point where you're managing multiple projects. And my goal for you in this conversation, and my guest, Kristen Lettini's goal in this conversation, is for you to automate as much of this as you can to take as much of the project management back and forth off of your plate. In fact, we're getting past just project management in this conversation. We're actually going to talk about what you can automate before the project even kicks off, all the way to offboarding a project and handling ongoing client communication as well. You can automate a lot more than I guarantee that you have set up. So we're going to dive into what automations you're missing right now and what Kristen, as an operations and systems specialist, is going to recommend. Some auto reminders that you can literally get going on today to help save time in your business. How to choose the right CRM for you. Kristen and I both use 17 Hats. We are super fans and I've been using it both for a long time. And we're going to dive into what you can do to set your business up for sustainability. So without further ado, here is Kristen Lettini. And again, as I mentioned, we are both 17 Hats users. This is going to come into play here, but I just wanted to give them a special shout out because they are currently sponsoring this podcast and my newsletter this month. And if you haven't yet, I definitely recommend grabbing my quote, invoice, and contract template, which you can get completely for free when you give 17 Hats a free trial. You can use my link, joshhall.co/17hats, to pick that up right now. And the show notes for this episode will be linked below, so make sure you head over there to get connected with Kristen. She's also the host of the Build Your Own Fairy Tale podcast. I was recently on her show. We'll make sure that's linked over at the show notes as well. All right, without further ado, automation. Kristen, let's go. Kristen, it is so good to have you on. I had the absolute honor of being your first male guest on your podcast. So really excited to have you on. You are not the first female on my show, but by golly, I'm super excited to have you. We're going to make it special either way.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Josh. I am excited to be here.
We have a lot in common. We're both 17 Hats fan folk. And yeah. I have learned and become more appreciative of automation over the years. And not just because of AI, but just because I remember I had a very night and day, like before and after moment in my business when actually I used 17 Hats and I automated my invoice, proposal, contract, and getting started email sequence together. It was like, oh my God, why didn't I do this? What was your experience with automation? Have you always been an automation geek, or did you have a similar experience where you were like, oh my God, this is life-changing?
I have always leaned towards the systems nerd side, right? Like even when I was having nothing to do with this world, in the corporate world, I spent 13 years with a large company. There'd be like, a SharePoint or something everyone cringed at. And I was like, ooh, let me figure out how to make this work for me. And I've always just taken an interest to it and like tried to learn the rules to make it work for me. So I call it like an efficiency. I can't keep away from efficiencies. That's always been what I've attracted to. So when I find a system that can do it, I'm like, ooh, teach me all the things. I want to do it all.
Okay. I like that idea. I like that frame. So the umbrella term for automation system processes is efficiency. That's kind of what your guiding light is.
Yes, and honestly, this is all branching back to my corporate days. Like I felt like I had no white space, no room around the edges. I was in back to back meetings all day, and like no room to do work, no room to have fun, no room to be creative, right? And so the same is true as a solopreneur now, right? If you are busy doing all the administrative tasks, like you don't have room to be creative and do the fun things that you set out to do when you started your business. Because I'm willing to bet that not one person listening started their business to like do the paperwork, you know?
So do you feel like automating and working on systems and operations first actually leaves more room for creativity? Because is that kind of the mindset of that?
Yes, absolutely. Because I know there's this like tension, right? A lot of creatives are like, oh no, it's every time is different. It's very free flow. And like, I totally get and respect it. At the same time, when you put in a little bit of structure, you create so much freedom for yourself to really live into that creative freedom. So I feel like they can live harmoniously. Absolutely.
I love that idea. I think that needs to be shouted from the digital mountaintop. Like that is so important for creatives, especially because I was shaking my head vigorously because I was that same way. I was like, I'm not going to create a process or a system. Those sound like corporate terms. And I didn't even know about the term automation when I got going. So I basically created a bit of a box for myself of creativity because I was fumbling and I had such scattered processes. And you're totally right. Like when you automate the admin stuff as much as you can and create a system, create a process, it really does free you up. It really does free you up it literally frees up time. And what can you do with more time? Be more creative. And
yeah. And by the way, when you automate, invoicing and follow up, hey, your invoice isn't paid, you bring in more money, right? So not only do you have more time, you could potentially be making more money. So
less stress, more creativity, less financial stress, more room for creativity.
Yeah.
What do you do now? When somebody asks you, Kristen, what do you do? What do you tell them?
We're still working on refining this, Josh. But essentially, my favorite thing to do is find current 17 Hats users who aren't using it to their fullest potential, right? You're like, I joined 17 Hats because I wanted to send invoices and I'm not using it for half the things I know it can do, but I just haven't had the time to learn it, right? So I love working with those folks to be like, oh, tell me what you're working on. Here's how we're going to make it better from start to finish. Or finding those solopreneurs who are doing it all manually. They've got all the spreadsheets and the Post-its and, they're doing it by themselves, and introducing them to 17 Hats and getting them set up so they can be like, oh my gosh, how did I not know this system existed? It's changed my life. So I love it.
What's your tagline? Are you a operations or automation expert? What do you, if you were to have a title, what would that be?
My self-given title is System Strategist, but I specialize in 17 Hats. I also have a lot of love for Flowdesk and Asana, but 17 Hats is the one where I'm able to dig in and build those automated workflows from like when someone goes on your website, they raise their hand, hey, I want to work with you, Josh, to all the way through like, how did Josh do? Tell us how we did, like through that customer review from start to finish.
This is going to sound like a 17 Hats pitch fest. I promise 17 Hats, even though they are one of my favorite partners and sponsors, one of my favorite tools, I promise they did not pay us to have this conversation, but I want to hear about your 17 Hats story because I think it's important, just like I had my, truly before and after moment when I finally started using it and automated my stuff. I imagine there were, maybe it wasn't as drastic, but I imagine there was still an interesting story to you using 17 Hats. Tell me about that. Like when you started your business, left the corporate world, did you find 17 Hats as a freelancer, solopreneur, or did you use 17 Hats in the corporate world in some way?
Funny story. The answer is neither of those. The answer is when I left the corporate world, I had my podcast and I was speaking to a friend who's a photographer who happened to be using 17 Hats. And after her podcast interview, we were talking and I was still trying to figure out what the heck I was going to make my business. Like, how was I going to make any money as an entrepreneur on my own? And she said, Kristen, I could use some help. Like, I'm using this system called 17 Hats and I know there's more to be done in here, but I just haven't had the time to figure it out. So I said, okay, I'll go in there. Let me, jump in and see what I can find out. I logged into a training. I figured it out, set her up. And she was like, oh my gosh, Kristen, you could be charging a lot of money for this. Like you just changed my entire life. So it was her aha moment telling me like the things that I enjoyed. Like I love puzzles. I love figuring out a problem solving, and then making the efficiencies and the technology. I was like, oh, well, that was really fun. So if you think this is amazing and other people are going to want it, like, I'll do this all day. This is really fun for me. And then I got to know 17 Hats and like what a great company they were. And again, not paying us, but I was like, okay, I can get on board. I could really dive in and learn all the ins and outs. Because I also thought, well, I could go and learn a bunch of systems, but then every time I have a new client and a new system, I got to have to start over. Right. So I decided to dive deep in with 17 Hats and, really take advantage of all the features, all the bells and whistles. That way, when a problem solving opportunity comes up with a new client, I can be like, oh, here's an instance where I can use this feature.
It's funny. Your story is very parallel to web designers. It's just like the systems efficiency version of it, because most web designers have the same story, which is like you're dabbling around with something and somebody's like, can you create me a website? And you're like, yeah, I'll figure it out. And then they're like, you should pay, you should charge for this. So it's kind of cool to hear the similar version for the systems world. When you did that, when the light bulb moment for you was I imagine it sounds like you were like, oh my gosh, I enjoy this. Really liked helping her. There was probably a noticeable, measurable impact, I would imagine, because like with some work, with service work, there tends to be like very quick before and afters and very quick results, or very long tail result, like SEO, for example. It can be hard to sell SEO when you need somebody to commit to a strategy for a long time, whereas a pure website design can be quite a before and after moment. With systems, I imagine it's a bit in the between, to where I guess what I'm asking is, how did you measure some of the results of automation for your clients to help you sell that? Because I would imagine, as a business systems efficiency expert, it's probably is it a hard thing to sell? I guess that's what I'm asking.
So I think it's a hard thing to communicate to somebody who's not in it, right? Somebody who's not struggling or who's not understanding the system, like somebody in the corporate world who has nothing to do with this is like, huh, what? Okay. So in that sense, a little bit hard. I do think it's difficult to quantify the exact number of hours and things, time saved, example, because I need somebody to track it, right? To go from the before to the after. But in terms of the qualitative, the client going like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I was doing this before I met you, and you just saved me so much time. Like that, seeing that reaction is quite easy. And then you're like, okay, yeah, it's working. So,
so she was using 17 Hats, your friend, right? And then how did you learn 17 Hats so quick? Like how you basically did, like, you killed two birds in one stone with learning 17 Hats and helping your client with the efficiency. How did that go? Like, did you find 17 Hats intuitive? Again, disclaimer, 17 Hats is not sponsoring this podcast. We both use it and are super fans of it. So how because I imagine that could be the opposite situation, where if somebody's using a platform and then you have to learn that and try to help them, that could have been a nightmare. But sounds like 17 Hats was just intuitive for you. Is that right?
Yes, I found it to be relatively straightforward, intuitive. Like maybe the terminology was new to me, but I was like, oh, if X, then go over here to Y. That makes sense to me. Like I said, I've always been drawn to these platforms and technologies, and I'm curious to learn how they work. I did sign on for a couple trainings, right? Like that 17 Hats hosted. So they were there for the taking. And I was like, okay, I'll listen in at 1.5, 2 times speed and figure out what they're saying, learn a couple more things. But it was mostly by doing. I had another thought. I forget what it was, but yeah, I've always been drawn. And I think part of what I bring to it, right, is I have that corporate background. So like I speak and I worked in marketing and communications for many years. So like I have that lens of, okay, the client experience, right? And then now being the business owner too, I have that, okay, as a business owner, how do I make my life easier? How do I free up time? How do I follow up with those leads? How do I do the 17,000 things on my list? So I'm able to marry those two. And I feel like I can speak both languages, and 17 Hats helps me bring them to life.
Let's talk about the client experience. I'm glad you alluded to your corporate background. I was going to ask, what you did there. So I think what a lot of freelancers, web designers, entrepreneurs miss is automation helps the client experience. And
Yes.
doesn't it just make you look like a freaking rock star when you have systems and it's automated? And clients, they may not always articulate this, but they're probably in their head, if they're not voicing it, like, damn, Josh has his crap together. This is impressive, right? Have you seen that? Like, is that kind of a byproduct with the client experience, is just making it, automating it, making it just super easy to get through and super communicative on the client side?
Yeah, I feel like the client experience is what helps build the brand, right? Not only did you deliver an awesome product or service, but everything around that, from every touch point they had with you, was like this elevated level. So that's your ticket to the elevated brand, the strong brand, and potentially charging more in the end, right?
Well, and then just like for the creative to be able to have time for creativity, I feel like from the client side of things, this is one thing I learned in my journey too, is like the easier I can make it for them, the faster they will get content to me, the happier they will be working with me, the faster they'll communicate with me. And we can leave like their bandwidth for the important high level stuff, revisions and getting the project done, versus like, did Josh wanted me to send what, where, when, how?
Yes. And even that, like, I can't shake my corporate background, where if I were to write an email, at one point I was in charge of an email going to 160,000 employees globally every week. So that email, you better believe, was reviewed by at least 10 people, if not more, every week. Right. So like,
I'm sweating just thinking about that.
I got really good at like, okay, does this word really need to be here? Is this real? Let me check all my links. Like, all that streamlining of how you're saying and what you're asking someone to do, because it was just critiqued so hard. So now I sort of bring a softer angle of that to my clients, because, okay, if you want them to do this one thing, you want them to click here to pay you, like, let's not tell them 5 other things right now. Let's send that in a follow-up email tomorrow, and let's automate it to go as soon as this one goes, right? Because if you give them 5 things to do, they can only do one. Which ones do you want them to do first? And so we have those sort of strategic conversations, and I help refine sometimes their terminology and their wording to be like, okay, what's the most important thing they need to do right now, or they need to know at this point in your journey?
All right, let's get geeky. Let's get very detailed and granular on this. So what is like a typical, and of course, as you know, Kristen, my audience are web designers, mostly freelancers, agency owners. So this is like paramount to avoid wasting time and bandwidth, both on the customer, our side and the customer side. But what are like, do you have buckets of automations and different phases that are common? I guess what would be like a typical automation flow, even if it's just the high level for a designer, a web designer, for example?
Yep. So, and I learned this from Amanda Ray over at 17 Hats, and I use it for all of my builds and myself. But you have their lead, right? Somebody raises their hand and says, I need a web design. I want to work with you, what have you. So we're a lead. I'm talking to you. I'm getting information. Okay. What does Josh want? Okay. You're my lead. Now, when I'm ready to send you, I have everything I need, and I can quote you. I can send you a proposal. I put you in the booking phase, and I have a series of steps for booking, right? And here we send a quote, a contract, and an invoice, ideally all together. I know I said one thing at a time, but with 17 Hats, you can send it in one button. So it is one call to action, right?
That's what I have in my business book. Yeah.
Yep. Quote, contract, invoice. And now you're booking. And the moment you pay me, or the moment you sign your contract, whatever the trigger is for you, now you are a booked client. So now we're in phase 3. And there might be a point between booked and delivery, like some businesses it's really short, some it's longer. So at some point you might have onboarding, engagement, et cetera, before the actual delivery. And then once I deliver the website or the photo shoot or whatever the product or service is, then I put it into fulfillment. So I guess that was four phases, 4 buckets. And so the way I build, I have a workflow or a series of workflows for each of those buckets. And that way, if somebody's coming in like sideways, they're not coming in from the very beginning of your journey, you can more easily be like, okay, they've already booked with me, so we're going to go into the booked bucket, right? That's where we're going to start.
And then what about after fulfillment? Do you have automations set up for post delivery or post fulfillment, launch, follow up?
Yep, I do have in fulfillment. I usually just split it up within it. But yes, post fulfillment after here's the final handoff. I do have the thank you follow up, the hey, please leave me a review wherever you want to direct them to, whether that's Google, something else. And then archiving the project so that it's not cluttering up my dashboard and to-do items, but I have the history if I need it. So yes, a little bit of the post delivery follow up. Typically, that's only the few steps that I have, but in web design, maybe there are more.
Yeah, I have a process course that like opens up my 50-step process, and it's been 5 phases. So it's really similar to what you have there, which is kind of why I wanted to set you up on hearing your phases in your process. Because I feel like web designers, as much as most creatives feel like they're not a typical business, you can make it a typical business, and it makes life way easier in that. Yeah, almost any service provider can break their phases down to 4 or 5 phases, like you just alluded to. So yeah, for web design, it's a lot like that, which is, I guess there's the process for actually building the website, but then there's like the client experience, the process, which is absolutely lead, and then booking, which would be sales conversions, and then onboarding, client collection, fulfillment, and then launch. And then launch would have like its own series of automations. So similar. So tell me about the lead. This is one thing where it's tricky sometimes, I guess, with how you're presenting as a web designer, at least how you're collecting leads, because you're going to get a lot of leads. And my little framework is that you're going to get leads in 2 buckets: quality leads or questionable leads. I don't want questionable leads hanging around much, and I don't want too much automation to go to them. So what would be some of your top tips for like filtering out those 2, and what automations you may send to either?
Yes. So you're exactly right. You either have too many and they're not quality enough, or you have crickets, right? You don't have enough. So you have to find the right balance. And there's 2 schools of thought, right? Like you can just get people in the door. So you ask minimal questions, name, email, and then you kind of go from there, right? You like bare minimum so I can contact you. Or you hit them up front with like a whole long survey, because you don't want people coming through the door proceeding past this step if they're not going to even take the time to fill this out, right? So between anywhere from like 2 to 15 questions, depending on how strict you want to be with that filtering. And I've had clients who do both, right? I feel like people who are at the more beginning of their journey and like don't have as many people knocking on their door just want people to come in, right? And give me your name, email. What are you looking for? Okay, I'll call you. And I don't suggest calling everybody as maybe as the first step, but very basic, right? And then I've had other clients. I'm like, why are you asking so many questions up front? They're like, well, I've got plenty of business. I'm charging enough. Like, I don't want those non-quality leads. Like, if they can't take the time to fill out this questionnaire, I don't want them. So
real quick, I just love hearing that, because that is exactly what I've been like preaching for the last couple of years, which is there's no right or wrong way to do this. Yeah. If you're early on, take the call, do calls, get a good feel for your customers. You're going to have the time right now. So do that, but then change that lead process very quickly, because somebody who's completely swamped and has high rates shouldn't be talking to the $500 client who has a ton of questions and is not going to take the time to fill that form out. So yes, I just love hearing not the corporate side of things, but the true, like the different business realm. It absolutely applies to web design too.
I will say, just for those who like want a solid answer here, I feel like the data says anywhere from 3 to 5 questions is sort of that sweet spot of middle ground. And you could always, again, with a system like a 17 Hats, you could automate. Okay, they only have to fill out the 3 to 5 questions. And then once they get in, boom, they get the next set of questions, right? So you don't have to ask all 10, 15 questions up front. It might be 2 phases, and maybe that's enough to get them through the door for you. But again, before you even pick it up to look at it, to be like, is this client somebody I want to work with? You'll have enough information to be like, oh, all right, they seem okay. Or yeah, no, I don't want that.
So regardless of whether somebody uses 17 Hats or Moxie or Dubsado or High Level or whatever system they're using, when should all leads have some sort of profile in your CRM when they enter your contact form? Or do you feel like only qualified leads should be?
I see no issue with bringing in all, as long as you are marking and tagging appropriately, right? To be like, okay, do not quote, or, you make a little note, or it's just a simple label as to why, so that if they come up again, right? Maybe they didn't like your response, they think a year later it's okay to come back, and maybe it is. You have that history, because if you don't save that, then you're not going to remember Joe Smith you didn't quote back then, right? And I also want to preface this with, even if you don't think they're a quality lead, I don't recommend ghosting. I still recommend a nice templated closeout, like, thank you so much. Unfortunately, I don't think we're a fit right now, or however you want to phrase it. But I think a very simple thanks, but no thanks is warranted.
Love it. Totally agree. What about the next phase? So I guess, do you primarily work with service providers, Kristen, or are you, because I feel like most automations in the phases you laid are going to be some sort of probably creative or service provider, right?
Yeah. Creative services. Yeah.
So what about booking? And of course, this is where, like in web design, here comes the can of worms, because now it gets to, do you have a productized offer? Do you have a custom offer that's going to require a lot more discovery and a strategy call? Is there a paid discovery offer? Is there a different model? Is it subscription? Is it one time? This is where, like, you can, in web design, at least you can really go wild with this phase. But what are like your automation tips for the actual booking side of things? I have my invoice proposal, it's actually proposal. It's quote contract invoice is my system. What are some like average good automations that everyone should focus on in that booking phase, regardless of their model and price point?
So I made a note before when you were speaking, how like everyone's like, oh, well, each one's different and everything is, it depends. I really try to challenge my clients and work strategically with them to figure it out, to be like, are you really that different? Right? Because you just ran through a whole thing. So maybe we can have a little menu board ready for you that goes to, maybe your menu is larger than others, but there are like some sort of templatized buckets that you have, I'm sure, within your business that we should spend some time thinking about. And how can we standardize them? Because it kind of sucks to have to go every time and be like, what should I charge for this? Right? How many hours is this going to take? Like, one, you're burning your hours just by making a quote every time. So if you can take some of that time up front, or maybe, it's one thing and then you add to it as you go, but having that strategic thinking about, okay, is it that different? Or what things can I replicate, duplicate, repeat? Yeah. What things can I repeat?
And that term you just said there is like, that's the term, that's the buzzword, standardize, which I feel is different than productize. Because productize could be like, this is my web design package. It's $2,000. Every client who wants this, it's $2,000. You may have add-ons, but this is it. Whereas if you do have custom work, like I often do and teach, I have it in ranges, but it's still standardized in those ranges. It's like the small, medium, or large packets, basically. So yes, totally agree.
And so maybe the number might change every time because this one's small, medium, large, but the general description is probably very similar, right? Or maybe you have 3 distinct descriptions and 3 distinct numbers, but you can put them in your little product menu, pricing menu, whatever you want to call it.
Is that what you often help 17 Hats folks out with, is like a standardized quote type of proposal with add-ons? Is that what you see work best?
It is what many of my creative service providers do end up having based on what they tell me they're already offering, right? So a lot of them coming to me already have, this is what I offer, and I will help encourage them to streamline if it's like all over the place. But yes, here's your base thing. These are the must buys as part of this package. And then, by the way, here's some options. If you want to add this, this, and this, you can. If not, no big deal. And by the way, if you say yes, your invoice automatically adjusts. So there's no back and forth.
Yeah, that is one thing. It's funny. So 17 Hats sponsored our first WDP Con, my community's first in-person event. And they sent a lovely human with a hell of a beard by the name of Jeb, who is just a fan favorite in Web Designer Pro. And it's funny because I've been using 17 Hats since 2018, 17. And I had no idea how many more features they've released over the years. Shame on me for not like keeping up with it. And then he was doing some stuff. I was like, I didn't even know you could do that with like tagging and filters and automation. So at this point, like, I guess I feel like you could get dangerous with like how much is too much with add-ons and automation. So aside from the quote contract invoice, are there any other typical automations in this booking phase?
Yes, and you're exactly right. You could totally, get lost or be too dangerous if you try to get too crazy too quickly. So the key elements that I like to start with, right, are sending the quote contract invoice, right? Let's make that look professional. Let's have it easy. Let's get them signed on with you quickly. Sorry, it was a cat. Let's send some automated reminder emails like, hey, your quote's coming up for acceptance. Don't forget, right? I don't have to be sitting here to send that to you. Let's put a due date on it and send a reminder. Online scheduling is another one. I cringe. I don't get too many these days, but if somebody's like, hey, are you free next Friday at 2? Oh my gosh, send me a link and I'll schedule it for what works for both you and me, right? Let's keep it simple. So online scheduling is part of 17 Hats. And what's the other one? Oh, and your lead contacts, your lead inquiries. So I also, this is way more common. If you go on somebody's website and contact me and you fill out the form and you get nothing, I am oh, please, we need some help. And listen, I know, because then it's going to sit in somebody's inbox, right? And based on how quickly they get back to me, if it's manual, I'm oh, I guess they're not busy. Or if it takes days, I'm who are you and why did I contact you? I don't remember.
What should they get after somebody submits a contact form before they even go into the quote process? What should they get immediately, typically?
Yeah, this is your prime use case, in my opinion, for the automation, because there should be some automated acknowledgement. Thank you, right? Thanks for reaching out. Here's what happens next. And ideally, it's here's what happens next. Go over here and answer these few questions for me, or set up a call with me, click here, or whatever you want them to do next, because we live in the days of Amazon Prime, right? People are not expected to wait multiple days and even weeks for you to get back to them, right? They are anticipating oh, if you are legit business, you will respond.
So an automation immediately, for sure, after a contact form. Next steps, depending if it's schedule a call, and this may depend on the qualified or questionable lead too. I know for me, I was a wild man, and just every day I would email lead. Although I wasn't getting that many leads, so it was never an issue. But I think a business at any amount of scale needs to have that automated. I kind of organically just had a basic contact form, and then I decided quality or questionable. And then I had a template for each route, but that could still be automated depending on what fields are in the first form, I suppose, too.
The nice thing is you can adjust it as your business changes, right? So right now you might just want to call everybody the first day. That's fine, because you have the time to do it. Maybe next month.
I did, though, have an immediate kickback that said, your message is received. I'll get back to you within 24 hours, Monday through Friday. You'll actually hear from me, Josh, and then we'll move forward next step. So,
I feel like that bare minimum, one email, perfect.
Bare minimum. The follow-ups, proposal follow-ups. This is a big pain point for web designers. What's your automation tips for follow-ups? How long do you go on quotes and for reminders before you're all right, this is, do you set, I recommend setting deadlines on your quotes and say this quote is valid for 30 days typically. Yes. Kristen, your thoughts, automation engineer thoughts.
Yes. And it's funny because even back before my corporate days, when I was working for a small mom and pop, I would always send quotes. I was selling pharmaceutical excipients and they were always, this quote is valid for 30 days. So yes, you always have a deadline on there, whether it's automated or not. You want to make sure it's clear. That way, if the person comes back in 6 months, a year, no, I'm sorry, prices have changed. Right. Yeah,
that's huge. That's really important for web designers because so hand up, I had some who came back years later. I'm I'm not charging $1,000 for a 20-page website anymore. So, we're looking at 5K starting, and then they're all, they're all, huh? What? The quote was 1,000. I was it was freaking 2 years ago. Huge.
I have grown and advanced since then.
Huge.
So deadline number one. And number two, if you are using a system like a 17 Hats, you have the ability to turn on these automated reminders so that before the deadline, after the deadline, they go, hey, don't forget, this quote is due. And for me, the number, that's going to depend, in my opinion, how long the quote was valid for. But I think if they haven't met your deadline, whether that's 2 days, 2 weeks, I go with 2 or 3 follow-ups, because at the end of that, I'm I've pinged them a couple times. They're not interested. And I have seen this magic email. You send the email that's okay, you know what? Haven't heard from you. I'm going to move it to archive. If this was an oversight on your part, let me know. I'm happy to move it out. If not, no harm done. Let me know if you want to talk in the future. And then sometimes that quote threat of I'm moving on from you is enough to be like, oh, no, wait, I'm ready to talk now. I just was busy, right? On the client's part.
Or maybe a last chance. That could be a good like final call, last chance. That's a great idea. Yeah. I feel like in a 30-day window, I'd say 5 to 7 touches is probably doable. And the fact is a lot of business owners are busy and they're scattered, and maybe I do this all the time. Shame on me for still looking at my email on my phone, but I'll look at an email when I'm like sitting in a waiting room or something and be like, "Ooh, I need to get back to that." Forgot that it's unread, completely forgot about it when I get home. So those things happen too. So I remember, this is like common, I think, especially early stage web designers who, look, they have a lot going on. I get it. They're not thinking automation first, but they send a quote and they're like, I sent a quote like 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard back. And I'm often like, how many reminders have you sent? They're like, oh, I just sent the quote. I'm like, you have to remind them. Even if it's a great potential client, they're busy. You got to hit them. You have to remind them. I think 5 to 7 is probably my sweet spot. I'm okay now with a little more like reminding on emails, just with the amount of people, like how scattered people are online with different social media and everywhere they're at. So that's kind of my rule of thumb.
No, I like 5 to 7. I think it too depends on like how you space them out, right? Are you sending 5 days in a row? Are you sending every week for 5 weeks? Because this is a bigger ticket thing. And you're like, okay, this is a bigger decision. It takes more time. Similar to leads, like there's no right answer. So I feel like all those variables come into play, but at least 2 to 3, because like you said, they might not have seen it the first time. They might have been busy and said, I'll do it later. And they forgot about it. It happens to all of us.
And the cool thing about 17 Hats, I'm sure you appreciate this feature too, is you can see when they viewed it. I love that, because even if I didn't hear back in a couple of days, I can go and see that client open this up, which means at the very least, they open it up. And I did this with some clients and they were like, oh, that's wild. I would say like, hey, I saw you read the proposal. So let me know if you have any questions. Next steps, we could do a quick discovery call if need be to answer any follow-up questions. And then you can automate the reminders, but
I've never called anyone out like that. That's interesting, because I've had the opposite where people will be like, oh, I didn't see it. I'm like, that's funny. I could see you saw it, but I don't think
I literally did that. And some clients were like, oh, I didn't even know. Kind of creepy, but like, I'm always watching you, client. Let's move forward. I have your address. There's a way to not get some business. So, okay. Great call on the reminders. They move forward. This is where it's very different for, as you mentioned, the fulfillment, because some services are productized, and like a photographer may have a pretty quick window between, like you said, a date, we do the package, and then, you're there. With a creative project like web design, it's content collection. That's where things really can expand and increase in scope. So I kind of have my own processes for this, but on a broader sense for like fulfillment, what do you see work in that kind of bucket? And again, we don't need to get too in the weeds for web design specifically, but if you're collecting content, design, brand assets and stuff like that, do you base it off a deadline, like the actual project deadlines with like any automation reminders?
So I like to map out like from A to B or A to Z, like beginning to end, like what is happening? What is the average timeline? Obviously, some projects will go quicker, some will go slower, but what's the average timeline? I'll talk with my clients between these points and what has to happen in there. And then we try to space it out. So we're engaging at the right times. Like, do I need it all up front, or can I wait a week? And then every week I'm checking in with them. So I like to, especially if it's a longer window, like how can I keep them engaged? It's not just you sign up for a website and then 6 months later, here it is, right? Or you don't sign up for a photo session and then show up 6 months later with like no reminders, no nothing. So what can we do in between? And oftentimes that's collecting information. I like to leverage a questionnaire because again, I can put a deadline on it, which will send automated reminders. And then I know it's all going to live within the project notes. If I need them to send me something, I can schedule those emails to go, okay, at the 2 month before mark, this is when I'm going to need to ask for this asset. Let's schedule that in. So scheduling, setting deadlines for any questionnaire type of information, and spacing it out, because I don't want to bombard them with like, here are the 10 things I need right now.
Right.
If I can help it. Sometimes you're going to need 10 things at once, but And if I do need that many, maybe let's get on a call, because I can hold your hand as we walk through it. Okay, now give me A. Now give me B.
What about the all too common, for web designers at least, you send a design and crickets on feedback? what would be, I guess this would all depend on the project timeline and deadline, which is again, why there should be, I imagine you're shaking your head. Yes. Set a project deadline from the get go, like a, launch date. But in the revision feedback window, what are some typical automations in there that you've seen work? And again, this may depend on the industry, but what are your thoughts on that?
This is fun. And again, it's bringing me back to my corporate days of when marketing would send something over for review, or the designers would send it over to marketing for review. And it's like, okay, you get 2 rounds of iteration and we're going to schedule a call to talk through it. So you could incorporate that into your workflow of, here's the design, here's the link to schedule. I recommend next Wednesday, Wednesday or Friday, but click here to schedule when you're ready. And then I could have an automated email that says, or check here, I noticed you haven't scheduled your call. Let's get that on the book so we can keep this moving. So again, it's like trying to think through where those holdups are going to be with not scheduling the call, or just, I don't want to say it's this date and time. I want you to pick it through the online scheduler based on the calendar in front of you. But anything you can do to push them along to say, let's talk this out. If you're not going to give me the feedback, I feel like that live feedback is sometimes the quickest and easiest, but if they are willing to mark it up and send back the notes, that'd be fabulous, right? Because and if you could understand it.
Yeah,
so
right.
Maybe it's a system. I haven't come across the right one yet where it's video notes, like you go on the screen and you point out, okay, over here, I want it to be blue instead of pink. And I don't know if that tool exists in your world.
Yeah, there is. Oh gosh, how timely. Somebody just talked. Hold on one sec. Let me just look real quick.
Because I know that would be something I might do to deliver. Like, okay, I'm going to make this quick little video clip to walk you through the design. Because, if you put it in the email and people don't read it, they want to see it, they want to hear it. And so I feel like you have a better chance of them watching this little clip of explaining the design versus reading your bullets in an email.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. There is, let me go through real quick. Where is it? That's tool on feedback. I could have sworn somebody posted one that was literally like a markup type tool.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are multiple. I don't actively use one.
Markup. There it is. Markup.io. That's what it is. Okay. So we'll leave this in the show notes. Yeah. Maybe this will be good for you too, Kristen. Yeah. Markup.io. So they can go through, the client can actually literally like comment on images, websites, PDFs, videos. Yeah, there we go. It's Markup.io.
Yeah.
So.
But I think ultimately like mapping out what the process should look like, what the ideal timeline is, right? They get back to you right away. They schedule for 2 days from now. And then where are those potentials for tie-ups, right? They don't schedule, or they don't give feedback, or what other things. Like, you think through those ideal scenario, worst case scenario, and sort of plan for that. And where can I have emails ready to go, at least templatized? They don't have to always hit send, but they're there in case I need to quickly be like, oh, Josh hasn't gotten back to me. Let's send him this note that says, let's go.
Now let's open up a whole other can of worms, because this could be a whole different set of phases, which is the launch and follow-up process. And again, this totally depends on the industry, I think, because if it's like a photographer, for example, you may, and I'm only mentioning that just because I know 17 Hats started as a photography tool primarily, but then it expanded creatives and agencies, developers, etc. But typically, like, you're going to be done and you may have a basic follow-up sequence, whereas a web designer, you're kind of starting the relationship when a website goes live. So it could be a very, very different thing. But what are some of the, like, here's what I see. A lot of web designers, myself included for years, you get done with a project and you think you're done. But wrong. That's like the time to start the relationship if you're really serious about building recurring revenue and having upsells and working with your client ongoing. So I guess here's the question. What are some of the gold gem automations that creatives are not thinking about after launch?
Yeah. Again, I think if you can map out that ideal timeline of, okay, I launch a website, I hand it over to my client, they hit go live or whatever the magic button is, right, to start using it. Maybe ideally after 1 week, I'm like, hey, how's it going? Maybe they need 30 days. Maybe they need a little more time. I don't know the right timeline here, but thinking through what that is. And then you have an email set to go at that time point that says, hey, Josh, just checking in. How's it going? Looks good on my side. Like, everything looks beautiful, but how is this XYZ form working for you? So thinking through, like, what's those typical touch points for you? And it could be a simple email. It could be a, hey, let's get a call in the books because it's been 30 days since we connected and I want to hear what I need to adjust for you. So here's the link. Again, it's a template email and you're going to tweak it every time to make it fit for your client if you want to. So it's either scheduling a call to touch base, just sending an email saying what's going on. And I even do this for like virtual coffee chats, right? Like I have a simple automated workflow where, okay, you have the coffee chat. I take some notes so I don't forget. What did I learn about Josh today? He was pretty cool. All right, let me remember this for next time. And then whatever the timeline I want it to be, 2 months. All right, let me just send a note to Josh, see how he's doing. Or in the meantime, if I think of him and I have something, I'll send it over. But at a minimum, I send a little check-in like, hey, it was great meeting you. However long ago. What's going on? What's new? And I have my notes to reference back on so I can remember exactly what we talked about. So I feel like it's kind of a different flavor of that same thing. You're just trying to keep the relationship alive and open. And you're like, I didn't forget about you. And I still remember everything you told me about your kid's baseball game, right?
And those automations post-launch would be different from just like getting a client on your newsletter and just staying top of mind. So how long would the like follow-up window for automations go? What do you see a sweet spot there? Like few months, less, more?
I mean, it can go as long as you want it to is the technical answer. But yeah, I feel like if I'm like done delivering and I've met all the deliverables outlined, I feel like for me, a month, 2 months of just little check-in here and there. But I have had many clients where I'm not sending an active check-in, but they're on my list. So I'm top of mind and I answer an email when they ask me a one-off question. And so when they come back, it's very easy to be like, oh yeah, sure. And we sign on for the next project, you know?
What about upsells? This is a common question, which is like, after all that work and the whole project is live, the client's excited to share it. I found you generally don't want to be like, by the way, you can buy this and this and this for only 3 minutes of $9.99. So like, do you, as far as automating upsells, again, the caveat of like, it depends, and there's a lot of variations here, but is that something you typically factor in for service providers at some point in that automation sequence post-launch?
Yes. I mean, I've seen different processes. And so say like, a photographer, for instance, when they're showing the gallery, they're having that viewing, they might say, okay, if you want to buy extra, it's X, Y, and Z. And I like when they don't have to decide, like, I don't have to say, yes, Josh, I'll take 3 extra prints or 3 extra pages, whatever, like on the spot. We talk about it. I tell you it's available. I may not even go into pricing detail. I just say, this is an option. And then immediately following the meeting, here's another quote proposal that I can self-select. Do I want more? I can think about, okay, yeah, it's $50 a thing. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I mean, like I have that time and privacy as the client to figure it out versus like feeling, wow, he's really trying to push this upsell on me. So I like this sort of 2-part, like I'll tell you about it live. And so it's a little less pushy. And then here's the follow-up. If you want it, it's there. If not, no big deal.
Any automations we missed as we kind of unpacked all those phases?
I mean, I think what people forget about is that closeout, right? So when it is that last touch point, or maybe even before the final touch point, how did I do? Because feedback to a small business owner is so important. And it's so easy to forget if somebody's not telling you along the way, like, hey, Josh, I think this could have been better, or this was amazing, right? Obviously, when they tell you it's amazing, you remember those. But sometimes you want the stuff that like, what could I do better? Or, oh, if Josh didn't love that, this other guy's probably not going to love that. So maybe I want to change it. So I feel like having a template ready to go, or even yet automated out the door to say, how'd we do? Let us know. A review is so important to us as small business owners. And please go here to leave it, right?
Now, I feel there's a difference between asking for feedback and asking for a review, like a testimonial. So when is the time to ask for a review and when is the time to ask for feedback on the project?
True. So the review, I would definitely put at the end because we want to make sure we've satisfied our client and hopefully they're giving you 5-star or whatever the equivalent is and sharing so other people can see it. But yes, if you're having these conversations along the way, like being open to if there is that feedback, or even if they're not saying like, Josh, this stinks, if you can tell that they're not super thrilled, like taking a moment to pause and dig into that, even if you're on a timeline, right? Because that feedback could be gold for your next 10 clients, right? For you and your next clients. So I think maybe just having that sense or point of view that like every interaction could be some feedback and being open to it and not, we all hope that our process is perfect, right? And it's doing well, but let's be honest, there's always going to be room for improvement. So whether you've been doing it for a year or 10 years, like somebody might say something that's like, oh, yeah, I could try that instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Good idea. Yeah. Cause we're often blinded by our own processes where like it's just easy to be inside the bottle and not read the label really clearly. I'm like, oh, that could be better. Yep. Duh. I do feel like it's funny with like testimonials and reviews, there's so many different ideas for this, but I've always felt like get a review quickly and it's going to be fairly, what's the right word? It's not going to be like a dense results oriented type of thing generally. Cause it's just going to be like site looks great or Josh and his team did a great job. They communicated great. I do think there's room for like a follow-up review, which would be more of like a full testimonial or maybe like a case study that is a few months after, but that could be a little more organic too. I mean, I suppose that could be automated. Of course you can in 17 hats, but I would try to get the review quick. And then I do like that nudge from you about like true feedback that's private, like confidential, give us feedback. And that would be perfect at like maybe the 30-day mark or something. Cause you'd have a little room for like the honeymoon period of the fresh project to die down. And then you could collect like, what could we do better? What could we improve on? Maybe it's that, what could we improve on?
Yeah. And I'm even thinking some of that feedback was happening along the way, not even after the 30 days, right?
That's true,
like
yeah.
In your live sessions or whatever interactions you have, like being open to it happening organically. Because if you're just like, any feedback from this call, like it's awkward and they might be like, I don't know. Right.
Yeah.
But if you can sense like a vibe, like, oh, tell me more about that. Right. It doesn't have to be like, here's the feedback, but you can interpret it. Oh, this is good feedback.
So do you think the feedback question, however it's phrased, should be automated?
The feedback question. I mean, I think it should be organically built into your conversations and I liked your idea of also having it automated at the end, right? Or maybe it's schedule a 15-minute. I'd love to get you're like my ideal client because people like to feel special, right? I've been asked to be on a few of those. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, I feel really special that I am your ideal client and you want to get more from me. I enjoyed working with you. Okay, sure. I'll give you 15 minutes. And maybe for like now I'm like mixing and blending things. This is not related to a project, but maybe for like you buy them a coffee or send them a coffee gift card. Like then you can get some more honest feedback and it's totally separate. They're not worried you're going to like mess up their project.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's a good point because I mean, I'm just thinking like you get a massage, you go get your oil changed, you take your kids to an appointment, you're generally going to get some sort of automated feedback reminder. It's usually a survey, even if it's short. So I'm trying to think of like, and you're totally right. I think maybe a more organic approach. Like you may have some clients where you're like, I don't care about your opinion. I have a little framework for like A, B, or C clients. So like A clients, you want their opinion. Like what can you improve on? But C clients who you're like, look, if they don't purchase again, that's fine. I don't necessarily, care. So maybe that's the way to go. Yeah.
And especially too, because I know I've like gone through a couple different business models, right? As I'm sure every entrepreneur has, right? You evolve. And so if this is the first time, maybe there's a discount, but also maybe it's, hey, this is new for me. How does this feel for you? Like you can point blank ask, like, do you like this process? How's this working for you? Because I've not done it before this way, right?
That's true. Yeah. I like that, especially for new rollouts. Yeah. For new offers or new product services. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the results of automation as we kind of wrap this up here? What are time, we kind of alluded to this in the beginning, but there's time, obviously literal, just automation, like you're multiplying yourself and how many tasks you do. There's probably less overhead, less hiring because you can automate, especially with 17 hats. I mean, instead of hiring a VA to do a lot of the correspondence, you can literally just automate it. Confidence, probably. I'm kind of answering my own question, but what are some of the other things that you're seeing as far as like the results of automations like this?
I think we missed your sanity, right? Is one. You don't have to keep all of this in your head. It frees up that for whatever it is, whether it's business related or personal. And I think the thing that people don't necessarily tie it to for me is brand, right? You are elevating your brand through automating and making those processes consistent, because every client who comes through your door has a very similar thing. And they're all like, yeah, that was pretty awesome. And they're more likely to give you that 5-star review. They're more likely to tell somebody else about you. And that's going to get more clients going through your door. So I feel like the brand, like elevating and strengthening your brand, is one of the byproducts, in my opinion, that people don't necessarily equate. But I am determined to bring closer to, this is what systems and automation can bring you.
Well, speaking of you, Kristen, I have one final question, but to your genius of systems, operations, automation, efficiencies, all the above, where should people go to connect with you and to see what how you can help their business potentially?
Yeah. My website, KristenLettini.com. And on there's a contact page, which is going to link you to my contact form. And that is an easy way to get in touch with me. Hopefully after all this conversation, you do get an instant reply that we've talked about.
Kristen has no automation set up. How ironic.
Nothing. But yeah, that will get the conversation started. And yeah, I mean, if you are a 17 Hats user and looking for help, or hey, you have no system and you're looking to get one set up, I'm happy to chat. But I'm also happy to chat all things. So KristenLettini.com is the place to go.
And your podcast.
Yes.
What was it called? Fairy Tale, right? Build Your Own Fairy Tale.
My podcast is Build Your Own Fairy Tale. You can hear Josh and other guests. We talk about their journeys to their business ownership, and almost all, I think, all of my guests have had non-traditional 9 to 5 roles, right? So we've had Josh on. I've had a woman who builds sandcastles for a living, woman who paints murals, like all things where you're like, I didn't know that could be a job.
How can you build sandcastles for a living?
She teaches Sandcastle University. She teaches how to make sandcastles.
And
then she's expanded. That's like one revenue stream for her, what people come like for, in the area, tourism.
So she teaches the art of sandcastle creation.
Yeah. And then she gets hired on for like sponsorships, and people, they don't have to be there. She just like sends a video of it. It's crazy. It's really cool.
Wow. That's fascinating.
So
well, if I ever disappear online, I'm probably going to be doing sandcastle creation or something.
So yeah, anytime I see somebody like, what? That's a job, I'm usually reaching out and be like, hey,
that is cool.
Let's talk. How did you make that a job?
Yeah, that's freaking awesome. Well, we'll have all that linked up in the show notes. Kristen, thank you for your time. Real last final question. What is your favorite automation? Of all those that we talked about, what is the one to rule them all?
I think my favorite automation is the confirmation that you've booked with me, right? That says, thanks for signing on. Let's get this party started and let's go, because this is like the beginning of our beautiful relationship together. So
like booked a call, like after they booked a call or
I was thinking they signed the contract. They like sign on.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
That's the one that gets most exciting. But yes, I love them all. It's like your children. Can you pick a favorite? I don't know.
It's the party, because it's like a party. It's like, it should be a celebratory thing, right?
That's to me, it's a party, because now let's get to work. Like, give me the puzzle. I'm going to solve it. We're going to go.
That is a really important note, by the way, to make that part fun, because that's when a client can feel overwhelmed, which is like, oh God, I just moved forward. I just paid 10 grand or whatever. A little nervous. How much work do I have to do? But if you make it fun and like, congrats, I'm so excited. Key. Yes. It
is. It's a party.
One step further, embed a little like video, a little 30-minute video of you in that automation. Just say, hey, I'm so excited. We got to sign on. Not going to overwhelm you right now. We'll send the next steps, but I just want to say, pumped. Thanks for paying my car payment this week, whatever, I
love it. And oh my gosh, you just reminded me of like, I took a sound clip from your episode on my podcast, Josh, where you're like, put more of you in it. So if you can record the video, go for it. I love it.
Yeah. Heck yeah. All right, Kristen, this is great. Thank you so much. Super fun. We'll have all the links in the show notes. Until next time, I'll see you in 17 Hats land.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Josh.
So many of things that you can automate, from the very, very first touch with your leads to the very, very ending touch as an ongoing client. I hope this conversation helped. You can drop us a comment over at the show notes for this episode, which are going to be found at joshhall.co/403. Make sure to go check out Kristen. Her website is KristenLettini.com. And again, she is the host of the Build Your Own Fairy Tale podcast. If you would like to hear yours truly in my recent interview over there, you can go to her website, click on podcast, and there I will be. All right, my friends, cheers to your automation endeavors. I hope you, like me and Kristen, would consider checking out 17 Hats because it was a life changer for me, and it has been for many of my students and members of my community, Web Designer Pro. Just a last reminder on that, to pick up my contract, quote, and invoice template for free, you can go to joshhall.co/17 hats. It is a plug and play automation that is awaiting you, my friend. All right, friends, cheers and stay subscribed. I'll see you on the next one.